This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Yeah. So, this is what happened on the previous Starship Savers and Scoundrels. These things are gonna kill me one day.
Smokes with cigarettes.
Tell me, Lenny, what's been the fan reaction to your character?
Oh, the fans love me, and I really have had great feedback from them. There's one who especially stands out to me. Her name's Jonna Marie something or other. Man, she's relentless, I tell you. Email, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Tinder. They even made me as a plush toy. You know, I had some licensing issues. Apparently my image was out there in some foreign movies that I was in during the 1970s that maybe they didn't necessarily want associated with their show. So they had to make some slight changes, you know, to the animal just to avoid licensing and embarrassment issues. Well, is our series a limited run, Dennis?
Our series? I don't know that our publishers have let us know yet.
I think they just notified me that there's going to be a reboot in a new dimension next episode. Yeah.
I wonder who's going to play me.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey,
You're listening to...
my name is Dennis.
Here is Doth Taxus.
Well, this got odd. Welcome back, scoundrels. Here's what we have in store for episode 13 of the show. After a steady stream of Star Wars news, the past 2 weeks have been a little light. However, we'll discuss some minor Rogue One and Rebels developments in our news segment. With Rogue Friday behind us, it's time to talk action figures. Mike McDonald from the Sandcrawler podcast will join us to discuss our top 10 favorite action figures. After we talk some toys, Mike sticks around to tell us about his Star Wars room and the Sandcrawler podcast. Another classic hero has made his debut in Rebels. We'll take on the Antilles Extraction in our ongoing Rebels coverage. That's your rundown on this Baker's Dozen episode. Don't tell him I said so, but I'm sensing Taxus has something to get off his chest. Therefore, let's get right to it. This is Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels.
The holidays.
What, Halloween?
Nope. Force or Rogue Friday.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not national yet, but I guess it's becoming a holiday.
It transcends borders.
I didn't even know that store was still open.
Yeah. Well, what did you do to celebrate?
Nah, nothing.
Nothing?
Nope, nothing. How about you?
I keep hearing about Black Series something in Funko Pop.
Oh, yeah. Did you get any?
I sure did. I got an order of blackened sear catfish and ate it while listening to P-Funk.
That's completely wrong.
But, I thought you'd be proud of me.
Oh, I am. Just not for that.
I should have ordered the tilapia?
Let's start the show.
Greetings again, sweet scoundrels. Welcome back to the podcast that proclaims, thank Ashla, Bogan, and Bendu, it's Tuesday. I'm your shadowy co-host and reason to make it to the weekend, Darth Taxus, coming to you from the time machine of my flagship, the Assessor Collector. And with me is my co-host and the Robinson Crusoe of the show, Dennis, the Phantom Menace Keithley. Dennis?
Hey, Taxus. So, beyond the blackened fish, did you manage to get anything else to go with that on Rogue Friday?
Yeah, I had a agent out there working for me, and, well, let's just say they were able to procure a couple items.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I gotta keep it secret, you know, because they might end up gifts.
Gotcha. Yeah. Nah, there just wasn't much that I really wanted out there, so I took the day off from collecting, and yeah. Anyway, well, we got some stuff to do, so let's get to the news.
Fire it up.
All right. right, first up in the news, we have the name of another character for Rogue One. During the Sizzle Reel for the movie that was shown during Star Wars Celebration Europe, a grayskin Mon Calamari could be seen. On Rogue Friday, Topps released a new set of patch cards. One of those cards featured this new Mon Calamari, and his name was given as Admiral Ravis. It was previously disclosed by Pablo Hidalgo that the Admiral hails from one of the colder extremes of Mon Calamari. So, hey, a little bit more information. I remember that Mon Cal during the Sizzle Reel kind of caught everyone's attention because it wasn't that salmon color that Admiral Akbar and other Mon Cals that we'd seen. And it doesn't really hurt anything, I guess, to know what his name was. A little surprised that he was an admiral. Since the only other real Mon Cal we know, I guess excluding the guy from the Clone Wars, is also an admiral. But there you go.
Are we sure that admiral isn't some sort of familial name? Maybe we just think it's Admiral like we're used to, and really everybody, it's like, hey, go over there and ask Bob and Admiral what they're doing later.
You know what? I hadn't thought about that, and no, we're not certain, but
okay.
I would suggest probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Well, Yeah, that is pretty cool. Have you seen the action figure? I think they put some pictures out. Speaking of action figures,
no, I haven't seen that. Like I said, the only thing I've seen with this character was a picture of that patch card, which was pretty cool. If I was a card collector, that'd be something fun to have.
Yeah, that's cool. That is very cool. Yeah, the action figure's pretty awesome. It's got a really huge rocket. So hopefully we'll see him launch off a rocket or something.
The senior officers in the rebellion are packing some serious heat.
Seriously, you don't mess with them. Yeah. All right, well, are you ready for more Rogue One hype? Well, are you?
Oh, I can't get enough.
Excellent. It has been reported by various outlets that the final, or what is believed to be the final, Rogue One trailer will be attached to Marvel's Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is set to debut on November 4th in the United States, but it will premiere earlier at the end of October in other countries. Therefore, many have speculated the trailer will appear online everywhere sometime in October. And, I figure one way or another it will. You can't keep that stuff from going international,
Well, right. If they didn't put it out online, then someone's going to take a terrible, grainy copy that they got off their phone from being in the theater and put it online anyway. So, that's not the way they want it to be seen. And they want to get all those clicks and likes themselves. So they'll put the trailer out. And so we should be having it, about the time of Halloween, I'd guess.
So how much more can they show us, though? I mean, I don't know. It just seems like the trailers are pretty beefy already.
They really are. And, at this point, I'm starting to feel the way I was last year at this time for The Force Awakens, which is I don't need to see anything anymore. I'm going to see your movie.
Yes.
Of course, we're the core audience for a film like this. And they're still trying to reach the non-serious diehard Star Wars fans. So, that's why this is going out. It's not for you and me. But hey, I'm not going to avoid it. I know there's some people that will, but I'm planning on seeing Doctor Strange anyway. So if I don't see this thing online, I'm sure I'll see it when I get to the theater.
Yeah, I wasn't really planning on going to see Doctor Strange until they announced this.
Really?
No, not really.
Oh, okay. I was a little surprised by that. Okay, well, and perhaps what is our media story? Dave Filoni is no longer the supervising director for Rebels. Wait, don't panic. Don't do it. Brian Young from Big Shiny Robot noticed that Filoni's name did not appear as the supervising director for the season premiere Rebels. Instead, Justin Ridge has received that credit. What does that mean for Mr. Filoni's involvement in Rebels? Well, Brian noted that Pablo Hidalgo, through Twitter and Lucasfilm, through another release, has confirmed that Filoni is just as involved as ever on Rebels, and the change in structure was Justin Ridge stepping up, which frees Dave to do other things on Rebels and future Star Wars animation projects. And so, it was a good catch by Brian. And yeah, I know it kind of got blown out of proportion, and which never happens on the internet in some places. But yeah, from all reports, Dave is just as involved, if not more so, with the various aspects of Rebels. But hey, I think the bigger news is future animation projects.
Yeah.
So let the speculation begin.
Yeah, and you've got George Lucas Jr. Heading him up. So isn't that one of the best ways to maintain continuity between all these stories? It's kind of having the vision unified to a certain extent, you know? I mean, I'm not saying he's got a monopoly on it all, of course, but I think it's easier for the story to develop, especially when you have somebody so imaginative as Filoni at the helm.
Right. And, he was basically tutored by George Lucas into what was the prevailing Star Wars philosophy coming out of the movies. And he's got such a passion for the subject, and and he's told great Star Wars stories. So it's great knowing that he's going to be around and involved in future Lucasfilm animation projects. So that may be more Star Wars animation. Who knows? Maybe it's some other Lucasfilm property out there that'll be getting the animated treatment. There's that fan trailer for a potential animated Indiana Jones that's out there, so something like that would be cool to see. But I'm always down for another good animated Star Wars series, and I hope he's the man to bring it to us.
Now, Justin Ridge, if I remember correctly, think he might have been involved with Avatar as well, The Last Airbender.
I believe you are correct. Yes, he's worked with Dave on that. Yeah.
So I mean, no worries here, at all. I think you've got. Basically, there's something that comes in an organization when working with people for so long, and especially putting out quality product like that, you don't ever want to bust the band up, And so I feel great about Justin, taking the helm with this.
Yeah, Rebels is in good hands, regardless.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that is a brief look at the news. Of course, for all the latest news, check out wonderful sites like JediNews.com or Mike Audette Said on Tuesday usually gives a brief synopsis of what's going on in the Star Wars universe.
Greetings, scoundrels. This is Mike McDonald from the Sandcrawler Podcast, and you are listening to Dennis and Darth Taxus on Starship Sabers and Scoundrels.
One of the many things that makes Star Wars great is the collectibles, and some of the best and most popular collectibles for Star Wars are the action figures. Star Wars action figures have been around nearly as long as Star Wars itself. Taxus and I got to thinking, and that's always dangerous, and we decided to put together a list of our top 10-ish favorite Star Wars action figures. But we decided to bring in some help. Here to discuss the best Star Wars action figures is Mike McDonald from the Sandcrawler Podcast. Welcome, Mike.
Hello, boys. How's everybody doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Great. All right, so here's what we got going on. Like all of our top 10 lists, there are actually very few rules. When I say the best action figures, we're going off of purely subjective terms. A favorite can be determined because of the sculpt of the figure, or perhaps the choice is made because of sentimental value. With that said, Mike, as our guest, you get to go first. What is tops on your list?
Well, let's see. I went vintage. And I'm going to pick. I have the figures in front of me as we're doing this. I picked my vintage C-3PO from the first wave of the very first Kenner figures from 1978.
That's a nice pick.
That's a good choice. That was actually going to be mine. C-3PO and R2-D2 are my first two action figures. But why did you select him?
Well, the thing I like about 3PO is, especially this figure, it's 40 years old, and it could show up on a modern card as far as I'm concerned. Basically, because when you looked back at the most of the Kenner line, but especially those original 12 that first came out, they were very monochrome. You had Vader all in black, Leia all in white, Luke was like white and beige, like very, very monochromatic, nothing too special. And then 3PO shines. He's reflective. He looks just like in the movie. So where you had all the other figures that, okay, you know that's Han Solo, that's Greedo. There's no mistaking 3PO looks just like he did in the movie, and he's always stood out for me as definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there. When I was all of 3 and saw Star Wars for the first time back in '77, I was drawn to the droids, and so when I had the opportunity to select my first action figures, I went with 3PO and R2-D2, and didn't care that they really weren't the action heroes of that movie. I had no idea what that meant anyway. So good choice.
So is your 3PO still a nice lustrous golden hue, or like I remember I had a 3PO, and I swear at some point it converted to being more of a white gold.
I don't know if I left it out in the sun accidentally or anything like that. Do you remember any of the figures like having any sort of paint issues or anything like that? Or fading?
I think the 3PO probably... I'm just looking at mine now. Yeah, you know what? He may not be as yellow, if we want to maybe say that. There's certainly some fading. But, he still reflects. He still shines.
Cool. Have you ever seen figures like that? Like where they're kind of faded out to where they're not necessarily a gold anymore, but...
Not of my own. I have a couple of 3POs and I got a couple of Death Star droids, and they're still, they still got that nice finish. But there is a thing, if you look on eBay, people are trying to sell figures that they've basically bleached.
Oh.
That's removed that coating, and underneath it's mismatched color, mismatched plastic underneath. So they're trying to sell them off as prototypes.
Oh boy.
But,
wonderful.
Seems to have held up.
Well, Dennis?
Well, Taxus, you go ahead next. What's on your top of your list?
Well, I'm gonna set the Wayback Machine a little way forward, and the first one I'm gonna pick is my first Black Series foray. It's gonna be the Darth Maul Black Series, and it's just I haven't pulled him out of the box ever. He's up there in all his glory. I just think
what scale is that, Taxus? Sorry,
6 inch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And grabbed it off Target, off the peg for like $20. It was like the only thing there too. I was like, well, that's a pretty good deal. I guess I'll get that. I didn't really think about value or anything like that, but it's a great figure. I mean, it's real detailed. I love that you can change out the hooded head to the regular head. And it has the binoculars and everything, plus Maul's a favorite, I don't know. I guess if they came out with a different iteration of them, like post Cyborg Maul, I might be interested in that. But yeah, this is going to be one of my tops because it's my first one into kind of the modern figures.
Nice.
Okay. Well, for my first, I was going to do before Mike picked them. I was going to take C-3PO because that was my first figure. So I'm going to do call an audible, and I'm going to go with a Clone Trooper figure from Attack of the Clones. And the reason why I selected that one was years ago, shortly after the Clone Wars debuted, I introduced my oldest boy to Star Wars, and he fell in love with the Clone Wars. And so we ended up at Target one day, and I gave him the opportunity to pick any action figure he wanted. And this was one of those rare moments when the pegs were full of action figures, and there were the first wave of Jedi and Count Dooku, and there was Darth Vader, and many of the classic characters. And I thought for certain he was going to pick one of the Jedi, and Ahsoka, especially because he had told me that was his favorite character. Instead, he settled on a classic Attack of the Clones Clone Trooper. And I don't know why, but anyway, it was just a dad moment, taking him to get his first action figure. And so while I don't have any of my original action figures anymore, I still have all of his in the tackle box, and that clone trooper gets a special place.
Awesome.
Very nice. Yeah, my son's a prequel kid too.
See, that was kind of that was during my dark period. Like I guess I saw him, and like you, Dennis, like my girl and I were just walking down the aisle, and she picked out a couple of the Jedi. I think Luminar for one, and then obviously had to have a bad guy, so she got Sidious. But yeah, other than that, I just didn't really pay much attention to the waves during that time.
Yeah. Well, Mike, you have older kids, I think older than either Taxus and I. Were they into collecting any of the action figures?
My son definitely was. Yeah, he was, he was born in 98. So the prequels were, the first Star Wars movie he saw in theaters was Revenge of the Sith, and he was all about the clones. We have so many clones.
You have clones of clones.
Clones of clones, basically. You know what we have? We have clones of Qui-Gon. We have clones of young Obi-Wan.
Whoa.
Any battle pack or box set, there'd be 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5. You'd get it. And then I actually have an old Kenner Vader case that has literally 4 Qui-Gons, 4 Obi-Wans, 4 Grievuses, all with various broken.
Awesome.
So yeah, he was very much into it. He, just like we all did when I know in my case, when you outgrew toys, he sort of moved on. But he's come back to it definitely with The Force Awakens. Now he's 18 now. My daughter is 21, and she started only probably about 5 years ago, and her thing is collecting astromechs. And big time into Funko Pops. So I need to actually have her on my show with Dengar Dan. But so right. we all kind of do a little. He doesn't. So he's like I said, he's moved on to other things, but definitely she's still into like I said, as an older kid, as a young adult, astromechs and Funko Pop. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's cool when you get someone who has a very specialized collection like that.
Yeah.
So all right, Mike, what's next on your list?
Number 2, I picked 3, but they're basically the same idea, and that is the 3 Nemoidian characters that came out for Phantom Menace. So you got good grief, now I gotta remember them. Dauphine, you've got please don't make me guess these.
Lot Dodd.
Newt Gunray and Lot Dodd, thank you.
All right.
I'm staring at them. I can't remember their name. I knew that would happen. I should have wrote it down. But the reason I picked them is I'm a big fan of multi-articulation. I'm not a big fan of the simpler 5 points of articulation. But these guys are awesome because they do what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to stand there and look regal and, a little paranoid in their robes. And they're just gorgeous looking figures. They're all plastic robes, plastic headpieces, and they look just like they popped off the screen. The face sculpts have so much detail on them, and we kind of call this style of figure that doesn't need support and pretty much stands on its own. You call them salt and pepper shakers because it's really what they look like.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think the Palpatine was like that too.
You think Palpatine, think the old style Imperial Guard, Mon Mothma, so that type, where to do what they did on screen, they just need to stand there.
Now, when you picked, did that become a favorite after you acquired them, or is that something that when you saw them in the store, it was a favorite then?
I bought them. I always buy a figure. I try to buy a figure based on. I'm not a collect them all. I buy what I like first, and they just stand out. I mean, that whole Phantom Menace era of figures were so many cool sculpts. And these ones they're unreal how screen like they look. So I bought them for that reason too. And like I said, they don't do much, but they don't need to because in the film all they do is stand around and wring their hands. So they're perfect.
And get talked down to by Sidious.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, Taxus, what's next for you?
All right. Well, I'm going to go back to Return of the Jedi. And I'm picking the Jabba's Palace Luke. And here's the reason why. Even when I was a kid, I thought the lightsaber extending out of the arm thing was kind of spare. And so when I saw this new figure, and all of a sudden there's a lightsaber that fits in the hand and is separate, and he has a blaster pistol. And then the cloak that he's got was actual cloth as well. And I thought that was a really, really neat addition and neat change. It was a kind of a fun character or fun figure for me when I was a kid. And definitely I thought it was a game changer for it. With the separate, lightsaber, with the separate items that you got to fit in, the hands. Of course, I
have
lost
to agree
them all.
with you on the sabers coming out of the arm. I remember as a kid not liking at all that little piece of plastic that stuck out from the underneath side of their arm. That you'd have to push that in order to get the lightsaber to come out. And it seemed like it was not really a tapered blade either. You'd always have that
was
thing that was really thin on the tip, and I never quite got that. And so
it made me feel uncomfortable.
Right, and I'm pretty sure that the only downside of the Return of the Jedi, Luke and Vader, and them those separate lightsabers was they were so easy to lose.
I lost mine.
Don't think I had mine more than a week or two when I was a kid.
I'm sure mine was digested by a dog and ended up in the yard somewhere.
You paint such a pretty picture. Okay, well, something Mike said completely made me change my mind about my next pick, and that had to do with the astromechs. One of, as I've said on previous shows, one of my favorite vacation places is Disney World, and I'm certain, Mac, you've seen this too.
Yeah, I'm just deleting my fifth pick right now as you talk. Go ahead.
But they have the droid workshops, and both what's now Disney Springs, and then at the what do they call it outside of Star Tours? The Tuscan Traders or Tuscan Outpost or
Tatooine Traders.
Tatooine Traders, thank you.
Yeah.
But you get to build a droid, and on our last two vacations, my family we've each built a droid, and I've got those things all over the place. And I display those more than I think any other action figure that I've owned or ever owned. So it's fun. You can combine any color combination of torso, dome, and legs, and if you so desire, you can even put a goofy Mickey ears or a goofy hat or something on them as well. I chose not to do that, but I've got a burgeoning collection of astromechs, courtesy of the Droid Builder Workshop at Disney World. That again, it's a sentimental reminder of some fun vacations.
Yeah, agreed. I've got a ton. When I go down with a list. I look at, because they change out the parts that you can get, the different droids you can build. So I'll see what's available and match up those with ones I'm missing. I was able to come home with a pretty, not an exact version, but a pretty close version to Red Leader's astromech, for example.
Oh, cool.
So it lets me kind of fill holes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not fussy about anything more than okay, that looks like that one. I can cross it off my list. But yeah, they're a blast, and to get them, I received one as a gift from, actually, my son had gone on a school trip to LA to Disneyland, and he bought me a Droid Factory droid from Disneyland. So
awesome!
It's my only souvenir from Disneyland, because I've never been there. I've only been to to Disney World. So, but yeah, they're and like I was saying before about him and clones, the astromechs. You just keep. There's no reason to ever stop getting them. They're interchangeable. You can do whatever you want with them. And I think the cool thing too is R2 inherently is a fun character.
Yeah.
And it kind of carries over into that. So that great pick, Dennis. Yeah, absolutely love those.
Yeah, and one of the other things I love about it is that you can preserve the packaging even after you've opened it and put them right back in when you're done, which is, it doesn't add any value to it, but it's just kind of cool to have that ability to change the way you display them, unless you've thrown away the packaging. And I don't have any reason to, because you get stickers with the packaging, so you can not only build your droid, you can name it whatever you want and use those stickers to put it on the packaging. So
that is cool. Speaking of like a Droid Factory, do y'all remember that Droid Factory from the first toy release, or it might have been like a second wave or something?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Do they have a modern equivalent of that, or
no?
Okay.
I don't think so.
See, that would be pretty cool for them to roll back out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving along, Mike, what do you have for your third pick?
What do I have for my third pick? So I went with a very unique character, Hermie Odal from Jabba's Palace. He was that giant.
Yeah.
I don't even know giant worm face with a big red tongue sticking out.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know there was such an action
He's
figure.
holding a big, I think the only time he can, they show him laughing at one point. So I want to say maybe when Luke's talking to Jabba, but he's this giant figure. He's nearly the width. I've got my Neimoidian standing here. He's nearly the width of all three of them. He's just this huge figure. And it's funny because as collectors now, going through sort of the hassle of Force Friday last year and the Force Awakens and the whole, we can't, so a couple things are happening. We can't find the star of the movie on the shelf. Yeah. We still haven't gotten the other stars of the movies in, we don't have a Luke Skywalker, we don't have a General Leia, that kind of thing.
Right.
And back in the day, Hasbro put out this character that is so behind so not out front, but insane amount of detail to it. And he has we mentioned before, he's got a cloth cloak cape, which is enormous, that goes with this enormous figure. And it's tattered. It's completely realistic. You could do, in my opinion, you could do stop motion with this thing and make it look realistic. And the other cool thing, just to bring it around to Rogue One, is if you guys have seen the new Pao figure, Pao,
Yes.
where his jaw, his head closes down onto his jaw, which when you do that, it makes it look like he's looking at his phone. But this guy, Hermiodal, his jaw opens and closes properly.
So was this like a Return of the Jedi figure from like?
Yeah, it's a modern figure.
Is it was it part of the original releases back in the day? No. Okay.
No, brand new sculpt, brand new character. Yeah.
Okay. When was this released? Like,
oh boy, let me see.
was it when they were doing the reissue of the movies or something?
I'm looking at it now. I'm trying to think if it was an old Star Wars Insider. They used to have their online store through the magazine.
Oh, that's
Jeez,
cool.
You know what? No, I'm not really sure.
Well, I like to raise more questions than answers.
Years ago. Pardon me? Sorry.
I like to raise more questions than answers, Mike.
I'll be Googling as soon as we get offline. But yeah, it's like it was back in the day when Hasbro was just putting out, just figure after figure of obscure characters. So
Cool.
Yeah, I'm going to have to find a picture of this one. I've never even heard of that. That's fascinating. All right. Well, Taxus, you're up.
Okay, I'm going to go with a figure that came only with a playset. How about that? From Empire Strikes Back again. My next figure is the Imperial Probe Droid.
Nice.
Hey, I think it counts. And I remember thinking, that is like the coolest looking thing when I saw the movie. And so, of course, it came with the... was the set that had the Rebel, turret emplacement, and you could set them on a peg and kind of flip a little switch, and the thing would fall over. It wouldn't really bust up or anything like that, but back in 1982, that was pretty high technology. So having them do that, and of course, I pulled it apart and put it together. I still got it. I know it's up in the attic where you could scream as loud as you want because nobody can hear you for miles. But I know it's packed in there with everything else, and I really need to get up there and pull it out. But it was always one of my favorites. Yeah. It's
my memory of the probe droid is that the limbs all just kind of hung from the underside of that thing.
Yeah.
They weren't like stiffly attached.
Yeah, it was 1 point of articulation. Per limb.
Right.
But the head rotated. That was pretty cool. And and the thing was pretty big too.
Yeah, it was. I remember that set, and I remember the limbs just kind of flailing around on that one, which it was a cool, like you said, it was really cool. The Probe Droid is awesome, but I do remember it kind of being difficult to get that thing posed the way that I wanted.
It's like a plastic jellyfish.
True.
Yes, good point.
Well, your pick kind of leans into mine. For my next pick, I'm going with the AT-AT driver.
Cool.
When that movie came out, I was fascinated by the AT-AT, I think just like everybody else. And, I got the AT-AT driver well before I ever had an AT-AT. And, that was good enough for me. I loved the helmet on that character. It just seemed extremely menacing for someone who basically sits behind a control panel, and he's not really supposed to be getting out and fighting with anyone, but he had a little pistol, and I think I got rid of that and gave him someone else's rifle.
Sure.
It's just for me, is before I understood who Boba Fett was supposed to be. I saw that character, and there was just something about him that looked menacing that spoke to me. So that is my third pick, the AT-AT driver.
Did you ever notice what his helmet actually is is made out of?
Cheese?
Maybe they sculpted it with cheese. If you look, he's actually wearing a rebel pilot helmet
That's right.
over the stormtrooper mask type.
Yeah, I did notice because he had that ridge that
Yeah.
looked awfully similar. But yeah, now that you mention it, you're absolutely right.
You know,
Now, did you get the AT-AT at some point to go with the driver?
Yes.
Yes, there
that
you
was
go.
a good Christmas. My brothers and I each got one, and so we staged a few
Awesome.
raids on Echo Base of our own.
oh, that's so
Nice.
rad. Yeah, and it didn't cost you $300 back in the time, sure, too, right?
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
You know what I think it was about those characters, Dennis, is that their expressions were completely faceless, and they almost fit the scene of just the relentless and impending doom of the AT-AT itself. They didn't turn around. They weren't looking back and forth. They were just fixed, steady, straight on, you know? And
Yeah, and that was the other thing about you when you're saying faceless. I think for a lot of those earlier action figures, the sculpts of the face were, for lack of a better word, generic. Luke didn't really look like Mark Hamill, and
right.
Han Solo didn't really look like Harrison Ford.
that's a good point. Good point.
And so, things like the Stormtrooper and the AT-AT driver and Darth Vader, while it wasn't necessarily a perfect translation of what was on the screen, it didn't matter as much because it didn't actually have to look like a person. And
Yeah.
I think there's just something psychological about that that makes it. I know there's people who collect today the action figures and they focus on droids or characters that wear helmets because they don't have to worry about the likeness to an actor.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I like what you said about it sort of being almost a replacement for Boba Fett too. He is kind of that character is kind of menacing, more menacing than a stormtrooper. I think that's a good point.
No, thank you. Well, Mike, you're up again.
Okay. So this is, I think, this is pretty much my only sort of personal favorite with an actual meaning behind it, and that would be Gold Leader Dutch Vander,
Oh, cool.
Wow.
who flew a Y-wing over the Battle of Yavin. And he's a personal favorite, and I won't get into too long of a detail because if you get me started, we'll go way over. But he's sort of an old family friend, the actor Angus McInnes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He's from my hometown. He's from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. So that was kind of a big deal. One of my sort of earliest steps into like taking fandom a little further than just buying stuff and watching movies was I was actually able to track him down and wrote him a letter, got a letter back, and a couple autographed pictures and stuff. And so that was sort of the start of where you kind of thought, oh gee, there's a bigger world you can do with Star Wars than just sort of sitting on your couch watching the movie. So that was sort of the beginning of that.
Cool.
The other thing it did for me is it really got me interested in X-wing pilots and the whole Rebel pilot idea. And in fact, it's the focus in my collection in my room. Actually, is my Rebel base where I've collected not all but most of the pilots that have been released over the years.
So what wave was he? I mean, what era did they release him in?
Most recent was a Black Series line, not the Black Series that you see on the shelf now in the boxes, but in the older style with a card and a bubble, which was a couple years ago. And before that, I think it was the Saga line, which was the card was basically that image of the hands holding the lightsaber.
Okay.
So it would have fallen around the time of Attack of the Clones, and Attack of the Clones never had its own card. So yeah, it was the Saga line.
Now his helmet's got like am I thinking it's got some sort of like not chessboard like Biggs had, but it's got some sort of alternative design, doesn't it?
Yeah. Actually, all the pilots have something a little bit unique. He's got it's like a cross, almost like a tic-tac-toe type of.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So
is this 3.75 or?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not a big 6-inch collector, so.
That's your preference, 3.75.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Well,
That's cool. That's a cool addition. I wasn't actually even aware. I guess I should have been. At this point, there's an action figure of nearly everybody, but didn't realize that they had Gold Leader out
Yeah,
there.
There's actually a ton of Gold Group and Red Group. All the different pilots, Red Leader, Thierry, Biggs, Wedge, all those guys. Most of them are there. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay. Taxus, what do you got?
Well, I've got another one that for me was kind of a game changer again, and it's from Return of the Jedi, but I'm going to go with Leia as Bush. I thought it was really cool that you could actually had an action figure with a mask you could take off and put back on and everything. And also, who would give Han tender kisses if I didn't get her? So, but also, and she had that huge gun, you know? I mean, how do you fire that thing? I mean, do you need Jawas to hold it up for you? You know, and it just looks so ridiculous sticking in her hand and having her hold it up like a pistol. You know?
Yeah, I remember using that kind of more as a pike for her. That, not that it really worked out that well. You know, the other thing that was interesting about that figure is that, you know, I think my memory is when the Return of the Jedi action figures rolled out, for Leia, you got her and the Bush, and then you had the Endor costume. But of course, you know, the most iconic image of her is in the middle bikini. And Jabba's, if you had him, he had there's a little piece of string that had a collar on it that you could put any character in. Well, of course, they didn't have Leia's that. So, you know, when we were reenacting the movie, it was Leia in that Bush costume that kept getting chained up on Jabba's little throne there. You know, while someone else is getting thrown into the Rancor pit.
I think I had a friend that always put Luke in it. I remember that.
You know, I had a neighbor that was always doing that, always throwing, but I, couldn't figure out exactly how it was that Luke was getting put in that collar in the first place.
Yeah, everybody's got their thing, Dennis.
Right. All right. Well, I'm going to move on to my next choice here. And, you know, I'm going to go with the first Ahsoka action figure. And this ties back into my son when he was picking out action figures and he wanted an Ahsoka. And of course, I waited just a little too long to try and find one. So it became a quest. And every time that I heard that a Target or Toys R Us in the area was getting figures or was having a sale on Star Wars, or, you know, there was something big was going on with Star Wars, I go check it out. And, you know, they'd get one or two and they'd be gone. And then one day I was just out running errands. There was a birthday coming up and I stopped at the Toys R Us and they had a, I don't want to call it a play set because it wasn't that, but it was a pack, and it had the Clone Wars Anakin, the Clone Wars Ahsoka, and then some other characters that really aren't even important because it had an Ahsoka, and so there was an opportunity to get that, and that literally took months to track down, which is nothing nowadays for some people in their white whales, but at the time it was the end of a very long chase for me, and you know, I was very excited to present that to my boy on his birthday.
Thrill of the hunt, especially when you find your quarry, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Well, we're running low on time for this segment, so let's move through our last choices and any other honorable mentions we have here kind of quickly.
Okay.
Mike?
Let me give you one honorable mention to piggyback on your Astromech one, and that is the RX-24 droid from Star Tours, the original pilot Rex.
Yeah. That's a good choice.
Yeah, there was a whole line of Star Tour droids that you could only get at Disney parks back in very late 90s, early 2000s. Just a great set of unique figures. They didn't really look like anything else in Star Wars, but they still fit into the whole Star Wars universe, so those are pretty cool.
That's a good point.
Taxus?
Well, okay. I've got kind of a trifecta going with this, but they're all focused around one character. My runner-up was going to be the white prototype Boba Fett from the Black Series. That was a Walgreens exclusive, mainly because I spent 4 months stopping off in every single Walgreens I passed looking, you know, and then I had a friend of mine in Houston pick one up for me. And so I was really appreciative of that. But he still got it, I think. But then, kind of still in the theme, everybody remembers how awesome it was sending off for Boba Fett well, not everybody remembers, but I remember from the first wave, sending in your proofs of purchase and, waiting for, the mysterious Boba Fett figure coming. And you heard rumors that kids died from choking on the rocket because it shot out or something, and they were going to ban it, but you have one coming. And you get that brown box in the mail, and you're just like, it's him. You just rip it. Man, that was so awesome. Later, for some reason, I encased him in Play-Doh. Still picking it all out. But the absolute most awesome, and I'm not really sure when they released this because, things are really hazy. Strangely, around college and also when I was really young. The 12-inch original Boba Fett. Y'all remember that?
Yeah, I had that. That was really cool.
Man, that was the coolest action figure. I mean, that thing, the rocket pack on it had the string that you could connect him with, shoot off. And I don't think it was like a zip line. I think it was more like you could swing him with it. But he had the cool sawed-off blaster, and you could look through the back of his helmet through a little eye viewer that I think had a little bit more power than an iPhone lens. And then the visor, you could actually flip that sucker up and down. It made a noise whenever you did it. Just multiple points of articulation. You could. It was just, again, I think I've got him in the attic area. That's somewhat. It's not like a heat zone or anything. It's kind of a nice little area, but that I'd have to say. That was one of the coolest action figures that I ever had. I mean, I guess he counts as an action figure. It's just a really big one.
Sure.
Yeah, that one was on my list as well. Good choice.
I say if you can play with it, it counts.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
Sure.
My I've got a bunch of different ones I could mention. Right now I've got two on my desk, and that would be Kylo Ren and the Flame Trooper.
Cool.
As Mac, when you're talking about earlier about characters that stand up when you just put them there. That's one of the things I love about the 3 3/4 Kylo is that he just stands there. Yes, he did a lot more in the movie, but I don't have to worry about putting him on a stand or leaning him up against anything. He doesn't fall over. He stands there. And the Flame Trooper, I don't know, ever since I saw concept art for that character, it was just something about that look, that different look for a stormtrooper, different type of weapon, different type of backpack that intrigued me. And so I didn't see one for the longest time, but when I finally found one, I picked it up, and so those are the two sitting on my desk. And then back when Return of the Jedi was coming out, it was a completely different age. You didn't have the internet, and you didn't have an opportunity to get spoilers, and it was hard to learn things about the movies other than what interviews might appear in your newspaper or a magazine or something. But the other way to go about it is that the action figures started showing up before the film was released. And I remember standing in a toy aisle at Target looking at pegs full of action figures, trying to figure out who all these different characters were and what they were going to do, whether it was Bib Fortuna or the Gamorrean Guard. But at the time, the two that caught my attention the most that I had to figure out just what they were up to were the Scout Trooper and the Royal Guard. Now, it's kind of disappointing that the Royal Guard didn't do much but stand there and leave when the Emperor told them to.
Well, he was guarding. That was his action.
Right. Yeah, but come on, they look so awesome. They needed to do more. But the Scout Trooper obviously had some awesome scenes. So those were when I had an opportunity to get some of my first Return of the Jedi action figures, I picked those out just because I was so intrigued about what role they might have in this movie.
Yeah, Jedi.
Anyone else got a few quick hits to add to our list?
I had the Power of the Force 2 Imperial Guard from the 90s. On my list. He's just a textbook salt and pepper shaker. But like we said, he does what he did in the movie.
Stands there.
Yeah. So, looking menacing. The other one I would mention is the McQuarrie Concept Vader figure.
Ooh.
That came out.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, they put out a whole series of the McQuarrie Concepts. And the cool thing about it is I buy toys, I don't buy artwork. And this was a good way of combining the two things. You got to see those awesome early looks, of how the characters are going to look like, and they're in 3 3/4 form, so
that's awesome.
Sort of a double win. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, scoundrels, thank you so much for paying attention to this segment, and hope you've enjoyed us talking about our action figures. But we want to know what some of your action figures. So send us some pictures. Tweet them out to us at SQPod on Twitter, or put them on our Facebook page, facebook.com/SQPod, and we want to see them. So with that, that'll bring our first hypothetical to a close. Oh, no. All right. Well, Mike, I know you are a fellow RetroZap member, and you've previously done a column on your Star Wars room, and now you are focusing on customization. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so between now and hopefully till December when Rogue One comes out, I'm looking at specifically in my collection my whole Rebel base setup, and I've got basically it's my wife's hope chest with a big slab of plywood on top that I've set up my action figures on. And the first topic I conquered was doing easy customizations to your figures. I'm not creative at all with that sort of thing. You see people that do sculpts and all kinds of things, but I found a pretty easy way of just swapping heads. So what I was able to do is I picked up over time a lot of extra, seemed to be a lot of extra Black Series Bigs Dark Lighters at one time that I picked up for like a couple of bucks at comic book stores and stuff like that. So I found myself with half a dozen or so extras, and also a half dozen or so extra aliens that just weren't finding a home on my shelf. And I started sort of taking the alien heads off and putting those onto the X-Wing pilot bodies. And the idea is that you figure for the original trilogy, you get pretty much all human rebels.
Yeah.
There's a few, except you got Nine Numb, you've got obviously the Mon Calamari, Prune Face, who's got a brief cameo, but there's not a lot walking around like almost like you see like we saw the Jedi in the prequels. Yeah. So I thought it would be fun to just take some extra kind of familiar looking alien heads and stick them on some orange jumpsuits, and it really turned out nice. It was super easy to do. Literally heat up the figure's head, grab some pliers, pop the head off and pop the new one on, and I ended up with a couple really, I think they're really cool. They turned out really well, and it just kind of expands the whole look of the thing.
Awesome. I used to do stuff like that with G.I. Joe, but they were really easy because you just had to pull the screw out of the back, and all the pieces fell apart.
I was gonna say they just fall apart, right?
Yeah, Major Blood on the Baroness's body was always my favorite.
Is there a customization that you've done that stands out that is a favorite?
I've done, well, you know what? I did 3 pilots, and the first one I did is probably still my favorite. I just took I had far more extra modal nodes for the band in the cantina than I needed, so I took the head off of one of those Bith aliens and stuck it on one of the X-Wing pilots. That's probably my favorite. There's a picture up on the RetroZap article, and you can see
I saw that. That's cool.
Yeah, he's sort of talking to a random rebel who's actually a Naboo soldier, and they're arguing over the fact that he's got basically a standard issue helmet that won't fit on his giant head. So
celebrate his diversity, rebels. Come
yes,
on.
Exactly.
Now, after you've customized something like that, do they fit in the X-Wings or the Y-Wings?
Yeah, because the bodies are pilots. Mm-hmm. You know what? That's a interesting question. I've never actually jammed them down into the pilot seat. I would bet the Bith probably wouldn't. The other 2 figures that I did, one is a Nemoidian soldier, so he almost looks like a green version of Cad Bane.
Oh, cool.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. Same idea, right? Right. He probably would just because of the size of the head. But that's a good question, because I've actually got Dutch Vander's in the Y-Wing, and I think I have Porkins in the X-Wing, kind of with the the cockpit canopy up.
Okay, I was about to ask you that.
Yeah, I actually don't have them actually sitting in the ships, actually, to be honest.
Okay. You got to kind of wedge them in there. Maybe get a little Vaseline or something.
Yep.
Okay.
That and a mallet, and just kind of kind of ram them in there. So, but that's I've done those 3 pilots. I'm trying to think what else I really haven't done that many. It was one of those things where it's like wow, gee, that was easy, having zero experience with it. And, one of the other things I do in that case is you can take, figures that normally don't belong, and by just sort of taking off accessories that, sort of identify them with what they're supposed to be, or remove that, and they look a little more generic. So you take off the ridiculous, brown and yellow helmet off of a Naboo soldier, and it just looks like a technician.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That sort of thing. So,
yeah. And do you take that off with like tools or something, like a file?
I think that's just an accessory that just...
Oh, it just comes off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But,
over the past year or so, I've seen all your articles about the special modifications, I believe was the name of the column.
Yep.
And you were essentially remodeling sections of your Star Wars room by redoing shelving and moving things around. So I'm assuming this has found a home somewhere in that room.
Yeah, it's actually sitting right under, it's in a spare bedroom in the basement, and it's actually sitting right under the window. Like I said, it's on a hope chest, my wife's hope chest. And I went to Home Depot and got myself like a 7x3 piece of plywood, and that's sort of the base for it, the tabletop for it. So it's the first thing when you walk into the room. It's really the first thing you see. It's faces opposite to the door. Stands out pretty good.
Awesome.
It's different from all my other displays because everything else is on a bookshelf.
Mm-hmm.
So this sits a little bit different.
Yeah, I saw pics of what you'd worked on all weekend in that new shelf area, and that thing is awesome, man.
Yeah, it's right. I did those clear shelves.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were where did I pick those up at? I was cross-border shopping, actually. What is the name? Oh, the Container Store.
Canadians always coming across the border and taking our containers.
One of the things I've been I'm admiring the pictures on the article at the moment, but which reminds me, I've been a fan of the photography you do when you go camping and you take some of your action figures and the vehicles with you. Now, perhaps you could fill us in a little bit on that. When you go camping and you decide to bring some of this stuff along, do you have a theme in mind, or do you have some sort of a story you're trying to capture when you take these pictures, or does it just kind of happen when you get out there in the wild? I spend a bit of time beforehand trying to figure out maybe what I want to do with it. Actually, you know what? I had a camping trip this summer that I posted some of the pictures on sort of social media, but I've never gotten around to actually putting anything together with them. But for example, I had where we were camping. There's near the campground itself. There's a beach, and then there's this just basically it's big sort of short cliff, rocky area. It's basically exposed Canadian Shield, and when you don't see the tree line, it's very Tatooine. It's very sort of alien. So I brought a couple sets. I brought a bunch of Jawas and a couple of droids, and I actually brought a Y-wing and an A-wing. And I've got a whole backstory. Like I said, I haven't done anything with this yet, but the whole backstory was Dutch Vander and Biggs Darklighter were flying around the Yavin system and landed on, Yavin 3 instead of Yavin 4, which just looks like a very forested sort of northern environment called, Canada or something. So, but that's again, that's sort of a newer thing I started getting into, and it's a lot of fun because, at 48 years old, to be sitting on the floor with your legs crossed, making pew pew sounds and all that's going to look a little funny. So this is really it's an excuse to actually play with my stuff. I remember as a kid, like I would take the Kenner X-wing, and I'm sure everybody did this, but you'd hold it up in front of your face, at your nose, and you'd stare down R2's dome all the way right to the front of the. And it's kind of that idea where I was shooting the X-wing and the A-wing, I'm sorry, the Y-wing and the A-wing, is it was up a little bit higher on the rocks where I could be a little more eye level without, being flat on my stomach looking at it. And you're looking, and it's just, this is what I did. You got close to your toys, and you just sort of willed them to life. You made them look real. Yeah. And I thought, well, gee, I could do that with the camera.
And in some cases, they really turn on. There's some shots they just, okay, that's a toy, but there's some shots where you kind of go, oh, gee, that's actually kind of realistic looking. And it's just a lot of fun to do. It's an excuse to play with my toys.
I think I really appreciate that for the fact that it seems like in our society, we're getting farther and farther away from the use of imagination for children as a tool for play. And they're relying more on something that somebody's thought up that they want to feed them through a video screen, right. And then, they react. I mean, I think that what you do is like great to kind of capture that element of what it was like and what hopefully it should be. I mean, it seems like a lot of kids really dig the new figures coming out and everything. I don't know if you saw the video of my nephew tearing open Kylo Ren at Christmas, but basically I'm the coolest uncle ever after getting him that. And so and I have fun doing that because I have fun buying toys for kids. I really love doing Toys for Tots every year. That's a big charity that we hold close to us here in the house. And for the purpose of hopefully kids having fun, just inventing new things for their new adventures for the characters to go through. I think that's critical. I really hate how we've gotten away from that as a society, it seems.
Absolutely. I haven't really played with it myself, but there's that new app that you can put on your phone that
that thing is cool.
Figures. Yeah, I mean, even that's.
I know.
If that maybe sparks a little bit of creativity, I don't know how much control you have over it. I don't know what you can actually do. It seems like preset type special effects, but at least to me that's almost like, okay, fine. If you got to be on a device, then at least you can invent a battle or whatever the purpose of it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's I've got I mentioned my kids are older. My son was. Once he got his first video game, that was it for toys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think we can probably, all agree on that. But it's definitely it can't just be old guys buying this stuff. So you kind of hold out hope that there's still kids that are playing with this stuff.
Well, speaking of collecting and playing with this stuff, I know you've recently started a podcast with our former guest, Dan Lazat, focusing on collecting. So maybe you could fill us in a little bit on that.
Sure. That is our new show called The Sandcrawler. It's a collecting show for collectors. And what we're trying to emphasize is there's a lot of shows that basically, talk about new releases and they go through checklists and that sort of thing. And what we want to talk about more is, I don't buy any of the stuff as an investment. I don't buy any of it because it's going to let me retire 10 years early. I buy it because they're fun.
Yeah. So
the emphasis on our show is why do you collect? Basically, why do you collect and what do you do with it?
Yeah.
That's basically the heart of it. And what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to interview collectors. And just for that, just the same questions you guys are asking me, like why do you have this on this shelf and what's your focus and more of that rather than release dates and stock levels and that sort of thing, and more about the fun side of it. Because I know for myself, I've been listening to podcasts for I think it's 10 years now, and you listen to Star Wars podcasts and when shows that don't normally talk about collecting, when the hosts, honestly talk about, their toys and their collections, they get all wistful. And and then they step away and they talk about the next news item. And to me, it's like, well, no, what do you do with your stuff? You obviously like it. You keep talking about it, but what do you actually do with it? Yeah. So that's what we're trying to sort of emphasize with the Sandcrawler.
It's a good
pairing because I know you're bigger into the 3 3/4 action figures, and Dan has got a somewhat legendary Funko Pop collection.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And he also likes the 6-inch. You know what? He's all in. He likes the Funko. He likes the 6-inch, 3 3/4. We're having a current sort of battle right now where he likes to keep them minty fresh, and I like to open them. So that's been a lot of fun. One of mentioned the Commander Powell figure from Rogue One. His backpack doesn't stay on, the peg hole isn't deep enough. So I have it in my head to take a drill and fix that. And yeah,
it could be dangerous.
He cringes. So
yeah,
just use just use super glue. Sorry.
That's the other extreme.
Or like Dan says, just don't open it.
Oh, no.
You'll never know what the problem is. What's going to make it fun is we have a little bit different opinion on things, and so that'll make it for a fun show.
Oh yeah.
Well, hey, Mike, thanks so much for joining us to talk action figures today. Before you go, perhaps you could let the listeners know where they can find you on social media.
You can find me on Twitter at Mike Tarkin. The podcast's Twitter account is SandcrawlerCast. And like we mentioned before, I also write for RetroZap.com, mostly under the heading of special modifications. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram and blah, 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 blah. But Twitter's the main. You can find me on Twitter.
Awesome.
Yep, and I know you frequently go by Mike Tarkin almost everywhere. So, all right, well, thanks again, and that will do it for our second hypothetical.
The Ghost is a very nice ship. I could probably
Forget it.
I'm kidding, of course, but I do need a ship.
All right, Scoundrels, we're at episode 3 of season 3, and that is the Antilles Extraction. We're about to roll right into this, so if you haven't seen the episode, this is your spoiler warning. So, with that, after an Imperial ambush destroys a Rebel relief mission and many Rebel pilots, the Rebels receive a coded transmission from a new Fulcrum, informing them that some Imperial pilot cadets switched to defect from an elite Imperial Academy.
Over Ezra's objection, Hera assigns Sabine with the task of infiltrating the Academy and retrieving the pilots. Ezra and Kanan are assigned to assist her with the mission with support. After some training missions, Sabine meets Wedge, Antilles, Hobby, and Rake and learns they wish to defect.
The escape attempt is thwarted by Governor Price. Rake is killed during the escape, and Sabine, Wedge, and Hobie are captured. Sabine successfully escapes interrogation at the hands of Governor Price.
Just when it looks like Sabine, Wedge, and Hobby's second attempt to escape will fail, they receive assistance from an unexpected source. Agent Callus advises them how to escape from the Academy.
Finally, using an Imperial bomber, the trio manages to avoid the Imperial pursuit long enough for Ezra and Kanan to arrive and assist their escape. Wedge and Hobby are then admitted to the rebellion with much applause. All right, so that's the summary of the episode there, and there's really a couple key points, key things in this episode. Sure, first is Wedge has been introduced to the rebellion, and we learned that he was like Sabine, a former Imperial cadet. So what did you think of his introduction?
Well, I was really kind of happy to see it was similar to, I think, what the Legends has it as. We know that a lot of the Rebel pilots came from Imperial Academies. And I thought it was all right. I mean, I liked how they were assigned together first, and based on the training, the simulation, she could kind of tell he felt the same way she did about the orders that she was given. Yeah.
Right. I liked him. I think it was interesting. The first thing that we really learn about Wedge is chronologically and from A New Hope was that he gave that pessimistic remark about being impossible to hit that thermal exhaust port, even for a computer. I wonder what happened between this episode of Rebels and then, because he's pretty bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and optimistic, and eager to do the right thing, and ready to take on the Empire all by himself. And then by the time we get to A New Hope, he's not nearly as optimistic.
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe they did portray him just a little too. I don't know. I guess he could be a little bit buoyant, but there's a little excitement that comes with something new.
Right.
And I think they salvaged it with, he's naysaying and everything all in New Hope, but in Empire, he's like one of the, cheerleaders, you might think.
Well, an old Civil War saying comes to mind, seeing the elephant. And the soldiers who rushed off to war, and they're all excited, but then once they saw the battle, they saw the unique experience, the elephant, so to speak. Like when the circus was coming to town, they weren't so excited anymore. And so he was a cadet here, and so perhaps this is before he's seen any real combat, and he's had comrades die. That he's very optimistic about being a force for change in the galaxy. And then by the time we get to A New Hope, it's not the bold adventure anymore. It's a real war with real consequences.
Yeah, especially since he was piloting a freighter or something, and so he thought this sounded exciting.
Right. Well, even more important than Wedge, I think. We got the Sabine infiltrating the Academy, so this was a bit more of a Sabine episode. Yeah. They touched on the something we already knew from past seasons, which was that she had attended the Imperial Academy on Mandalore. And so I don't know that we really learned too much more about her past. Right. But she did get the chance to shine here. She was handcuffed and about to be put into a torture device and managed to escape from Governor Price.
Yeah, that was cool. That was a cool little beatdown.
Right, and then she got the opportunity to rescue Wedge and Hobie so they could escape from the Academy. So she did get the opportunity to shine there. It would have been nice to get just maybe one more detail about her past, but I'm not really sure we learned anything new.
Well, I think this is just the opening salvo in a lot of probably Sabine-centric arcs that we're going to find.
Yeah, I know we got more coming up about her, especially because we've seen the preview for the season. She was wielding the Blacksaber, so definitely more to come.
That's cool.
Well, let's quit avoiding it, and let's get to, I think, the two biggest things about this episode, and they might possibly be related. I don't think we know for certain. And the first one is that we learn that Ahsoka was not the only Fulcrum working for the rebellion. That was a code name for anyone supplying information to the rebels. And so we heard from a new Fulcrum at the beginning of the episode that sounds more like a male, informing them that they've got some Imperial cadet pilots that are wishing to defect, and which is perfect timing because they just lost a whole bunch of pilots with that failed relief mission at the beginning of the episode. And then the other big development is Agent Callus kind of coming to the rescue of Sabine, Wedge, and Hobie when they've made they're in the middle of their second escape. They're trying to make their way to the hangar to get a ship and get out of there, and the blast doors come down around them. They're trapped, and Callus steps in and says, "You want to avoid this level and take this hallway and go that path. That'll get you to the hangar." And he ends it by telling them, "Tell Zeb Aurelios that we're even," which was very cool.
Yeah, that was cool. But okay, ready? I think Callus is Fulcrum. I'm just going to say that. And I think he is because when he arrives with Governor Price and she's all, we think you've got some traitors here. He's like, well, we haven't uncovered anything. You know what I mean? Like he's trying to, I guess snow job it a little bit. Like,
I agree, and I think it's a reasonable assumption to make. And let's also look at some things that we know from last season and this season so far. He had when he got stranded on that planet with Zeb, which is the reference he's making here, and he had the injured leg, and he and Zeb worked together to survive on that planet and avoid some of the dangerous indigenous life forms. And then
where Zeb learned that move where he can flip people up with his feet, like he used already in this season. But just saying.
And then, when he finally gets rescued by his Imperial comrades, no one's happy to see him. And, he revealed then that he was not happy with the way that things went down on Lasat, with the way that those people were killed. He had been following orders, but, he didn't intend for that to happen. And then, it was just in the season premiere, he objected to the civilian casualties that were inherent in some of Thrawn's operations. So, he's clearly dissatisfied, or not entirely satisfied, I guess is safer to say, with the way things are working in the Empire. So at least they're teasing that he might be capable of defecting himself from the Empire or working from the inside to try and make things better.
And he's saying to Sabine, tell Zeb that we're even. That's kind of a ruse in and of itself, because, you know, instead of when she's like, why are you helping us? You know, he's thinking, I can't blow my cover with this, you know? So
that's a good point.
Just tell Zeb we're even. And now his cover is secured, and Sabine can't go back and be like, oh yeah, that Agent Callus, he really helped us out, and he's probably a Fulcrum, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even considered that. You know, clearly the Fulcrum identity is got to be one of the ongoing plot lines of this season.
Yeah.
It was a ongoing mystery from the first season before Ahsoka was revealed at the end, and you know who's Fulcrum, and people went to great lengths to, you know, take that voice and modify it to try and figure out who the actress was. And I think someone had figured out the first time that it was actually Eckstein, and I think someone's done it with this voice. I don't want to get into that.
Technology sucks.
But you know, so we're gonna, you know, I suspect at some point in the future we'll find out who this Fulcrum is. But you know, which one of the new canon novels was it? Was it Aftermath, the first Aftermath, when Wedge was talking about how he'd been recruited by Fulcrum to join the rebellion?
Oh, yeah.
At the time, everyone had just assumed that he was referring to Ahsoka because that's all we knew.
That's a good point.
But now it appears it was somebody else. It was a different Fulcrum.
Wow. I didn't even think about that. That's awesome. Yeah. Man. Boy. You know, I really hope it is Callus, you know?
I do too. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if they are giving us, you know, this is a red herring, maybe, and that it'll end up being somebody else. And hopefully, if that's the case, then it'll be something as equally or mind blowing in that situation. But I at least at the moment, I think we're supposed to put two and two together and figure out that this is Callus that's helping them out. So, well. You know, how do you think this episode compares with what we've seen so far this season?
It was a fun one-off. I like how they're introducing, you know, trying to bring in people that we're familiar with the original trilogy through this. I don't know. I feel like we could probably see Wedge more, you know, which would be fun. And maybe we will see. Maybe we will see what happens to make him a little jaded, you know?
Right.
Why not have some Wedge storylines in there?
Well, I think this was a good episode. I think, like you said, we've got the introduction of Wedge, so hopefully this means he'll be around more. We've got this new Fulcrum character, which I'm assuming will be an ongoing mystery for this season. And then, you know, we're left with what to think of Agent Callus. And, you know, the other thing is that I think it was cool to see that Governor Price is just more than a politician. She had, and you know, she made the remark while she was fighting Sabine that the Empire trained her well. And so that it's not that she's going to be just a figurehead for Thrawn. That she can get her hands dirty and do some things herself.
And Sabine replies, "My clan trained me well," even though she's been to the Imperial Academy. She obviously, I mean, you know, they were training her for combat from birth. So. One of the things I really loved about this was when Price was laying the trap and they decided, okay, we're going to make a break for it. Let's go. And, you know, the four, Sabine and the three defectors are making a break for the Corvette. And you hear I guess the mission controller saying there's 4 ships that have been identified as leaving the group or whatever. That really felt like that old TIE fighter game, where you're supposed to keep your eyes open for something, and then when it happens, your mission controller comes in and is like telling you, you know, TIE Alpha, go and intercept this, and blah blah blah. You know, it kind of gave me some good, I guess, old school feels. You might say.
Yeah, you know, they spent part of the mission in simulators, and I really did get that TIE fighter vibe. That PC TIE fighter game vibe from that, especially just. Kind of the way it moved, and you know, the strafing run on the freighter, and then well, any other quick hits before we wrap this up?
No, that's about it. I think it was a fun episode. I'll give it, you know, another A.
Yeah, I did enjoy watching TIE Fighter wings pop off.
That was
to
great.
thwart the escape, but I agree, it was a fun episode. I think it is. I really don't like giving grades to these things.
I know. Yeah,
and
Most of the
later I
stuff
go
I
back
love.
and I change them, but at the moment, it was a good episode. I'm going to give it B plus, A minus, somewhere around there, just because it was good. I don't really have any complaints about it, but it didn't just it wasn't completely wild. So
It was kind of a filler. It was a little filler.
Well, yeah, it was, but we still got things set up for later. I think it was crucial to the story of the season.
It was a fun episode.
Exactly. Well, that'll do it for our review of the Antilles Extraction. Scoundrels, if you have thoughts about this episode, we'd love to hear them. Send them to us at sqpod@retrozap.com. It's time for...
Silence, fools!
Okay, well, Silence Fools is a little light this week. Scoundrels, we need your emails. But anyway, Taxus, go ahead and read the email we received.
Sure. Darkside MX is back with the following email.
There he is.
He writes, I know that neither of you are huge into collecting 3 3/4 figures. So what is your favorite thing to collect? And what is your favorite single piece? Okay, so why don't we start with that? Dennis, what's your favorite thing to collect?
I am really big into collecting the Star Wars Lego sets. And wow, my single favorite piece of the Lego collection. Well, I got the Lego Millennium Falcon as a graduation gift for my wife when I graduated from law school. And
cool.
So that one's got a lot of sentimental value and it's really, really cool. But the two best pieces I have are probably the Slave 1, the advanced Slave 1 that was just released last year, and then the X-Wing that was released previous to that. And I also have Darth Vader's advanced tie. And of those three, the Slave 1 is just phenomenal. I really enjoyed putting that set together. It's just I have the original Slave 1 that was amongst some of the first Lego sets that were ever released, over a decade ago, and it was great for the time, and I still enjoy it quite a bit. It's sitting up on my shelves right now. But this new version of the Slave 1 is just a whole nother level.
They really refined it.
Oh yeah, it's clearly Lego, but it looks like a model of the Slave 1 as opposed to a Lego creation. So that would be my response. How about you?
Well, I'm kind of chaotic when it comes to my collecting. I guess I would say right now I really enjoy finding some cool Black Series 6 inches. And the one thing, they're pretty easy to come by, and plus the characters are kind of cool. I know like K2SO is like really awesome figure. My kids are still into collecting figures too, and they're kind of like me. They leave them in a box because they just like the way the display is on it. But if I had my druthers though, I'd really collect more lightsabers because that's my thing.
Do you open? I mean, we just had a long action figure conversation in this episode, but do you open any of them?
No. I guess if I had a dupe or something, I would. But I just like, I don't know. There's just something about them that I just kind of like the way that they're displayed. I like the artwork on the boxes a lot. I know some people will kind of say, well, this one I'll open and this one not. But, it's too much pressure.
Is it just the Black Series that you leave in the box, or do you leave everything that you collect in the box?
Pretty much just, I guess, just the Black Series. I mean, if I had something else, I mean, the only time that I really would rip something open, like I said, is if I've got any relatives in that are young and I'm picking them up some gifts and they want to play and stuff. That'd be different. But but yeah, this, I think in general, I'm not going to I don't really buy the 3 3/4. I'm mainly like the 6 inch just because I like all the detail involved in them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have that many 6-inch Black Series or the 3 3/4 figures. But if you go to our Facebook page right now, you can see the Kylo Ren and the Flame Trooper standing there.
Cool.
Those are my desk, and half the time while we're recording, I've got one of those action figures, and I'm waving them around, using them to emphasize what I'm talking about. But
Everybody can see it.
For me, the box just takes up too much room. I dealing with limited amount of space already. So
I need to kind of get and organize it. I've got a bookshelf with a lot of the books and different knick-knack items like the Sith Holocron, for example, on display, and I need to kind of reorganize them. I also like collecting the Star Wars spaceship, starship battle ships. I think those are pretty neat, and have those in a nice display. But I'd say though that the one thing that's my favorite is my lightsaber. And like I said, a lot of people get into, well, I guess saberists could get into, well, you should really do this with your saber, or you should go here or purchase these parts or whatever. And I'm kind of like, I found, I've got this company, they make a pretty good product. They make a really good product actually. And, it's Ultra Sabers, and they're based now out of Friendswood, Texas, I believe. So, yeehaw. And they make a really, really cool lightsaber. I mean, there's different versions available for different budgets, but it's a lot of fun with them. Yeah.
Right. Well, what else did Darkside MX have to say?
All right. Well, he also says, I usually prefer the 3 3/4 figures, but Dengar Dan has got me into the Funko Pops. Thanks a lot for that, by the way. Yeah. My single favorite piece would probably be my Jango Fett Camino Escape with the unpainted visor. Oh. It was a figure I read about in Star Wars Insider, then searched for months. And one day, the Cloud City clouds parted. And behold, there it was, front and center at Toys R Us. Also, my custom painted race helmet with Vader and the Imperial logo is a favorite. One of a kind. And you've seen that, right? You've seen his helmet? Yeah. That thing is awesome. I'd be so paranoid about racing in that. Well, I'd be paranoid about racing, period. But, especially with that thing. But yeah.
Yeah. I've got a small Funko collection. I just get the Smuggler's Bounty box, and that's how I've got all my Funkos. My kids have some from other sources, but I'm enjoying that Funko collection. It's just I'm enjoying the variety. I don't, I'm not even a completist with the Lego sets. I get most of those as gifts at Christmas or birthdays or whatever. And then the Funko, I'm just limiting to what I get out of the Smuggler's Bounty box. But I've got the Boba Fett and Chewbacca and R2-D2 sitting on my desk as well. I've got a lot of the Lego minifigs sitting up there as well.
Cool.
And like you mentioned, I got a bunch of the books. But I don't know. It's fun. I like having the stuff around. It's tough resisting the urge to complete some of these sets or to go out and find everything, because there's so much stuff out there is just fantastic. I even have some of the Star Wars Potato Head characters. Cool. Darth Spud just makes me laugh every time I look at him. And then, the Spud Trooper as well. Darth Tater is actually his name, and then the Spud Trooper. But those are fun to have. All right. Well, thanks for the email, Darkside MX. That was a great discussion topic, as always.
He always has great topics. Keep them coming.
Indeed. Well, yeah. Okay. Unless you have anything else, Taxus, that's going to do it for a really short edition of.
I actually do have something, Dennis. You may recall earlier this week. We had an non-exclusive, release soundtrack of the upcoming Rogue One movie. Do you remember that?
Yes. How could I forget?
Yeah, it was brilliant. And I'm just amazed. This is not the first time that something like this has been snuck out there by this little dark faux fox something. But I'm always shocked at how many people are even afraid to start reading it because they're afraid they're going to read spoilers. And as I started just kind of wrapping my nebulous noodle around this, I start gathering my anti-spoiling dark side energy force.
Saber Clash.
All right. Well, something's touched a nerve with Taxus, and he's got to get it off his chest by inflicting it upon the rest of us. So this is Saber Clash. Take it away, Taxus.
Thank you, Dennis. We all know that everyone is always excited about everything all of the time, but especially so when it involves the Star Wars. I know that it's hard for me to wait until we have revealed to us the next glorious installment of the greatest space saga ever told. And there are many more like me, and many more much, much worse. For I've identified a side effect of all this anticipation, a disease, if you may, that has begun to creep into all aspects of modern geek life. It's a mental disorder the likes of which has not been seen ever since Twilight was a phenomenon. It is a variant of epistemophobia, or nauseophobia, and I call it spoilerophobia. It is not a laughing matter. No, this is a most insidious malady. I have seen men and women reduced to hermity madness as they seek to live in social media exile, much like Luke Skywalker was in Act 2 at the end of The Force Awakens. We can argue the causes. Is it the Star Wars info-industrial complex? Is it the dealers in forbidden knowledge? Can we eliminate the demand and thusly destroy the supply? Or should we just legalize it all? This humble lord says shut up to all that thinking. Okay, 3, 2. While we here at the glorious Starship Sabers and Scoundrels strive to assure our listeners that we will subject them to potential spoilers, much like military geosynchronous satellites guiding drones into a mountain stronghold, launching missiles of revelations in full Patmosian apocalyptic dream style. But we care about you while you rock yourself to sleep in a fetal position, derived from the soul-crushing terror of knowing the name of the alien seen in the background of a charitable promotional spot. So, for those of you who are suffering from this, I have spent countless minutes with the best head shrinks in the galaxy. Together we have prepared a little mandatory therapy for all you hopeless crazies out there afraid to talk to your mom because she subscribes to Entertainment Weekly. Let's begin. He is his father. You are not the father. Who knows if she is his daughter? The son is not the father. It's the mom, not Jason. It's Norman, not the mom. They get married. They call it off. It's the dead guy lying on the floor. She's not really dead. He's a ghost the entire time. They're ghosts the entire time. The entire island are ghosts the entire time. Actually, I'm still not happy about that one. She shot JR. She shot Mr. Burns. It's people. The caller is in the same house, and the boat sinks. So, I hope this has desensitized you to the point to where you don't break out in a cold sweat every time you see the letters T, W, R, A, and S used in the same paragraph. And maybe, just maybe, you feel a little bit better looking at a target display of stormtroopers in paradise. I know I do. Oh, and I'm going to say one point of articulation at the end of the show. Back to you, Dennis.
So, there are ghosts shooting people in the same house while on the phone, stranded on an island, sinking boats? I'm confused.
Yeah, it's more of a film noir kind of thing.
Okay. All right, well, we had some news about Rogue One and Rebels. We had a great talk with Mac about action figures, and then that was fun reviewing the Antilles episode of Rebels, and that was quite a saber clash, Taxus.
Yeah. You just listed off 4 out of 5 points of articulation with this podcast.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we sign off, here is how you can find us on social media. The show can be found on Twitter at SQPod. I am at Darth Taxus, and Dennis can be followed at DJKVER2. We are also on Facebook and can be found there on facebook.com/SQPod.
All right, iTunes. Guys, we need reviews. So, Scoundrels, please, if you've enjoyed the show, or even if you haven't, we'd consider it a big favor if you'd head over there and leave us a 5-star review. Okay, that might be asking a bit much, but a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast would be very much appreciated. And if I find them, we typically read those reviews on the show. We haven't had one for a while, so if you could head over there and help us out, that would be great. And then if anything from the show's captured attention or imagination, we would love to hear about it, especially this week. We're talking action figures and Rebels, so if you got something you want to tell us about or share some of your pictures, email us at sqpod@retrozap.com. And it would be really fun to see some of these pictures of your action figures on Twitter. So send those again, as Taxus said, to sqpod and put them on our Facebook page. That'd be a fun community thing to do. So anyway, but the best emails, which is almost everything, will be read on the show.
Yeah, send us in your pictures, no matter how compromising positions you might be with them. All right. Well, don't forget, we are honored to be part of the RetroZap.com podcast network. Please check out RetroZap for other great shows, including Brews and Blasters, Blob of the Hut, The Argcast, The Deucecast Movie Show, Dunecast, Skywalking Through Neverland, Talking Apes TV, Techno Retro Dads, The Trade Federation, We Know Nothing, The Animanicast, The Sandcrawler, which you just heard one half of here tonight, and a brand new show coming to the RetroZap network, Beltway Banthas. So welcome to them, and we look forward to their work here with our network.
Yeah, I tell you, the RetroZap network keeps growing all the time.
Sure
and if
does.
it gets any longer, it's going to take us longer to read the shows than it is to put out our episodes.
We'll have to do special bonus shows just for reading off all the show names.
Exactly. Scoundrel Special Edition. All right. Well, and now the ever important legal stuff. Starship Sabers and Scoundrels is not endorsed, affiliated with, or sponsored by Lucasfilm Limited and or Disney. The show is mainly intended for entertainment and informational purposes. All characters, music, and sounds are intellectual property of the respective copyright holders. Anything that is left over after that is our intellectual property. That would be Starship Sabers and Scoundrels, unless otherwise indicated. And it's that time. Taxus, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, Dennis. You know, men are all different. But for me, my idea of a perfect figure is 3.75, 6, and 12.
Whoa.
I'm going to leave that one alone. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch up with you next time. May the Force be with each and every one of you.
And one point of articulation.